They all got quiet for you, I think.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a well-lit room this evening. My name is Valerie Mason. I am Chair of Community Board 8 in Manhattan. I want to welcome you to our it's already May full board session. And we will start off the evening tonight with the public session. When I call your name, you have 2 minutes. Please be aware of the timer if you're in the room. If you are participating via Zoom, you will see a countdown clock. Okay, we have the room until when? 9 o'clock, so.
9.
8? Oh, Mark says 8, okay. Maybe we'll do that by.
He said 11.
Adam said 7. Okay.
Now.
Okay, well, I'm happy that we're all in good mood tonight. Okay.
Red is Zoom.
Red is not redundant or not necessary.
Oh.
So I have not included room or.
First up is Evelyn David.
Evelyn,
Wait, in the room is this.
if they say in person,
Oh, sorry.
so yeah,
Oh, she's on Zoom.
yeah.
Why don't we start then with Nathaniel? He's in the room. Sorry, Nathaniel. I can give you enough lead time there.
And you can come up and use this microphone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you need some help with your visual aid, let me know.
Well, if someone can pass these out to everyone, this is what I'm gonna be showing.
Okay, is there somebody?
Just yeah.
Will, thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you to the community board. My name is Daniel, and I'm a resident of the East 66th Street block. I recently became aware that there is something called an oxygen farm. This is what an oxygen farm is, and this is what is being passed out to you. An oxygen farm exists on East 67th Street, adjacent to Memorial Sloan Kettering's existing hospital. The existing hospital is half the size of the 600-foot building that was just approved. This oxygen tank is 27 feet tall, and it is outside of the footprint of their existing building. There's a reason for that. It must have air above it. It must be 50 feet from any combustible object. The way the new design has been made, this new oxygen farm is directly under the 600-foot building. It is also adjacent to the entrance to the parking lot, where cars filled with gas will be continually driving it. Last week I did arts and crafts. We get arts and crafts again. This is the length of 66th Street. This is the elevation of the north side of the new tower. It's over 100 feet long. And along that line will be this is what they're building. This is the oxygen farm. This is all to scale. 4.5 inches equals 6 feet. Within that will be the oxygen tank and the carbon dioxide tank. And on either side of it will be cars coming and going. That should take this into consideration. Now that the building has already been approved, I'm calling on the fire department to declare that northbound lane on 66th Street a fire lane.
okay, thank you, Nathaniel. I just want to be clear. The resolution that we passed at land use was not a straight approval. It was a conditional approval. There are conditions that have to be met. And that is the first step in the healer process. So there are many opportunities for Nathaniel and the rest of the community to have some input into the project. There's a whole city planning piece, there's a city council piece, and so the process has just begun. I don't want anybody to think that the project is approved and there are shovels in the ground tomorrow. That's not how it works. Okay? Thank you. Next up.
So Evelyn's not on Zoom.
Evelyn's not on Zoom. Then let's go to Laura Jackson and then Kate Madigan and Yasmina Palumbo, all in the room. So if you could come up, it would help things. Go ahead, Laura.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Laura Jackson, here to follow up on last Wednesday's Land Use Committee meeting. There was one very concerning slide in MSK's presentation regarding the pavilion's ventilation system. As currently proposed, the intake vents would be on York Avenue and the exhaust vents would be facing people's homes on 66th Street, although Shelley just said that it's not that, but we'll see. CB8's resolution addressed noise mitigation during construction, but there is nothing in the resolution concerning noise emitted from the complete, this just went off, from the completed building. I'm here today to ask. I'm here today to ask that this crucial point not be overlooked in the final resolution. I have already contacted MSK's community liaison with my concerns, and she's sharing them with the design team. She's also aware that I'm asking for this point to be included in the resolution. My suggested wording would be as follows. To protect air quality and reduce noise levels adjacent to the residential neighborhood south of the proposed pavilion, we recommend that no air exhaust or intake vents be located along East 66th Street. All air exhaust and intake should be located on York Avenue and East 67th Street, which would face non-residential development. Thank you. And
Okay, well, I just want to reiterate that the resolution was already considered and finished. I see Shelley in the back of the room. I know you've spoken to him. He's listening. I think MSK wants to be a good neighbor in this process. That's why Shelley's here tonight. And these conversations will continue. And I would recommend, Laura, that you also send your thoughts and comments to our council person. Okay, who's that?
I believe someone was before, there was a name before you.
I think Kate Madigan? No? Okay, then Yasmina, your turn.
Please, Kelly.
Hi, I am also a resident on East 66th Street, and I have children that attend PS 183. And I too am following up on last week's meeting. I'm glad to hear that the conversation will be ongoing, because my concerns are ongoing. Once the construction is complete, which itself will be incredibly impactful, the ongoing maintenance of such a massive building is really concerning for our health. I have a lot of questions about the chemicals that will be required to maintain a sanitary environment like that. I have concerns about the venting indeed facing 66th Street. As I stated at the last meeting, 66th Street has often been treated as a service entrance for MSK, which has severely impacted our sleep, to say the very least. There's also a fairly frequent odor of sulfur in the neighborhood that seems to be coming from MSK. I'm not sure. I don't know where else it would be coming from. So again, I'm glad that the conversation will be continuing. I do want to hear assurances about the quality of life, the quality of air that we will be breathing for years to come. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, let's see, where are we? Jesse? No,
Down at
sorry.
the bottom, there's one more.
There's one
Caitlin Griffin
Go ahead, I can't.
is in
see
person.
them.
Caitlin Griffin, are you here?
Yeah, I see you.
I think that's the last in person.
Uh-huh.
2 minutes.
Great. Hi, my name is Caitlin Griffin. I live on 64th Street in the First Avenue Estate. I was here at the last meeting last week referred to, and we were not given much time to speak, so I wish to read my original testimony.
And this is, just a part of my fervent opposition to this, building, which is yet another, what I consider to be a land grab by MSK. And this community has accommodated MSK's requests for the last 30 years, and they're all over our neighborhood. And this building has only begun on the tail of finishing another building on 74th Street. So we're inundated by MSK. Repeatedly, our community board meetings have provided really a forum for MSK to repeatedly go on about the virtuosity of their mission and their excellence. That is not the issue of these public review meetings. This is not and never has been the purpose of any of our public reviews as part of ULURP, even including the task force meetings, which I'm told have been onerous and extensive and very, I suppose, successful from the point of view of those who partook in it. But judging by the last meeting last week, it just seems to me a sort of extensive courtship ceremony between our community board and MSK, to the exclusion of local residents like myself, who live around all of this activity. We are told how many changes were made at the task force request, and yet the application proposes a frightening structure with a frightening narrative and scares us all into submission. Our streets and subways and radios and TVs are already paid with MSK mission, and all the other countervailing, no less excellent hospitals participate in this, and yet our vistas and our sound spaces are taken up with this cancer crusade, as there needs to be a limit, and this building has well exceeded that limit. And what we want is quality of life and rational city planning purposes. The name Jane Jacobs should come to mind.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have to cut you off now. Thank you. Okay, I just want to say that, the task force met over several months and weeks and months. Those meetings were published in terms of time and agenda. They were open to the public, and we heard from many members of the public. I would also just like to point out that at our last meetings, the number of people who spoke, it was almost 50-50, 50 for the project and 50 against the project. So we are listening, and the community has been participating. And Caitlin, I'm sorry that you already spoke, so please be courteous to the rest of us. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move to Zoom.
So if you hear your name called, we'd ask that you just raise your virtual hand by going to the react icon and pressing the raise hand button. You'll have 2 minutes. You'll see the timer on our screen. I do see Evelyn is here, or, yeah,
Okay.
Evelyn's here.
Okay, then we'll start with Evelyn David. Go ahead, Evelyn. I'm sure we will be able to hear you.
Hi, good evening. I really have no complaints. I mean, besides the congestion pricing nightmare we're all fighting. And I want to see actually what the repercussions are going to be politically. Can you hear me? Hello?
Evelyn, we can hear you.
Give a thumbs up, maybe she can.
No, she can't see us. That's the problem.
Oh,
She always calls in from the phone. Try it again. She muted herself.
Oh, I think you muted yourself.
There you go. We could hear you before.
Oh, you can hear me?
You said you had no complaints. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Oh, okay. No, I don't know. You know what? I looked at the agenda. Everything I'm just going to listen to the meeting. Thank you very much for hosting it. I'll pay attention to what's going on. And, they did something weird with Lexington Avenue, and then it turned out they were repainting the stuff, the lines, the bus lines. So onward from there, I don't know what's going to happen down the road with everything else. People are trying to figure out how to not get into Manhattan anymore. There you go. That's the scuttlebutt. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll get off. I can't actually hear you in the background, so I don't know if you can, please tell me that you've heard this and I will get off now. Okay, thank you. You can mute me.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Okay, next, Dylan Kennedy.
Yeah, he's here. I'm just trying to unmute him. Yeah. Go ahead, Dylan, you can unmute.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Hi, I just wanted to call in to support, I believe, the City of Yes housing proposal is up for discussion. And I just want to, as a member of the public, say I'm completely in support of that. I am currently renting. I am a few weeks away from hearing what my new lease will be and how much rent will go up. And I'm bracing for it. And I would really love if there were lots of different housing opportunities, places for me to go if this lease goes up, or more importantly, my landlord would know that there are lots of other competing places for me to go and not raise my rent as much. So I just wanted to say I'm completely in support of housing. I think more people should get the opportunity to live in a city as great as New York. And right now, I'm also really feeling the scarcity of apartments. So I strongly urge the community board to continue to support City of Yes, specifically the housing bill. And I will cede the rest of my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dylan, and good luck with your lease. Okay, Andrew Fine.
Yes, hi everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think you can. Great. Just not in response to the last guy, but 30 years experience in real estate business. I can say hell no to the city of yes. It's a con. Anybody who's informed knows that. The scarcity of apartments is largely due to regulations in Albany, which Frankensteined a whole bunch of apartments. Second, East 86th Street is holding a clean team right after the East 72nd Street clean team on June 1st. We'll be at 11 a.m. Valerie, I hate to piggyback, but just send people from yours to ours when you're done with them. I just got back from a press conference and rally for nycevsa.org, nycevsa.org. We're rallying to eliminate e-bikes from the parks. There's a failed pilot program by the DOT, which has put e-bikes in the parks over the last year. And parks are supposed to be a sanctuary from our hustle and bustle. And it took 50 years to get rid of motorized vehicles in the parks. And all of a sudden we have them back. And since this has happened, the crime rate in Central Park has skyrocketed. Grand larcenies are up 33%. Overall crime has more than doubled. Robbery has skyrocketed by 375% year to date. This is exactly the same period that e-bikes were introduced to the parks. Enough is enough. Ban e-bikes from the parks. They hurt people. They set buildings on fire. And I encourage you to call Councilmember Menon and Councilmember Powers, who are not signed on to 0060, to keep e-bikes out of the parks. Again, nycevsa.org, nycevsa.org. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up, Alvin Henneberger. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Alvin, you can unmute.
Cool. Yeah, you got it right on the first try. That was awesome. Most people don't get it right. So I just wanted to chime in to say that I'm strongly in support of the housing proposals in the city of Yes. Primarily because, as we all know, the vacancy rate, the rental vacancy rate in New York City has dropped to a historic low of 1.4%. And why is that? A lot of people want to live here relative to the supply that we have. Thus, our rents are going up. I really hope that the board considers voting in full support of City Yes. And just like the other guy, I would love for my rent not to go up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody?
No, nobody left on Zoom. Jesse Ziegler, Kate Madigan, if you're here. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Ziegler. I represent NYC Small Business Services. I'm the Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. And to switch it up, I wanted to come here tonight to invite you all to our Small Business Expo that is happening this month. If you don't know, this month is Small Business Month. We are rallying everybody to support and shop local. And here's my pitch, so I'll keep it quick. If you're not familiar, the Department of Business Services helps unlock economic potential and create economic security for all New Yorkers by connecting them to good jobs, stronger businesses, and building thriving neighborhoods across all 5 boroughs. We're working every day to make New York City the most desirable place to start, operate, and grow a small business. From in-person and online education at one of our 7 NYC Business Solution Centers, to offering free resume help and interview prep to job seekers at one of our 18 Workforce One Career Centers, SBS is here to meet the needs of your community. Our other programs include, we have a NYC Business Express service team, we're best, and guide businesses through the myriad of red tape and regulations that they need to navigate in order to operate. With last year alone, we served 3,400 small businesses and saved them millions of dollars. We're also offering commercial lease assistance programs. So anybody who may be having trouble with their current lease with a commercial landlord, we can step in and try and mediate and negotiate that situation. They help people sign new commercial leases, amend, renew, terminate existing commercial leases, and just all of their issues, pre-litigation. Small Business Opportunity Fund was a wild success. It's closed, no point mentioning it, it'll save you time. And call to action, shop small. We are having a small business expo here. So I lost my card. Anyway, all the information is out in front. QR code there if you want to sign up. Tickets are free. And spread the word to your neighbors who operate retail businesses in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're gonna move the agenda quickly and everything, because our borough president is here as well. Just give us 2 seconds, okay? Thank you. All right, so, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight? Second, all in favor? Aye. Awesome, okay, motion to accept the minutes from our last. Second, everybody in favor? Aye. Wow, okay, Mr. Borough President, come on up. He needs no introduction, but he is Mark Levine.
Okay.
And he's
Well,
55. Happy birthday, Borough President.
I've been called out. That's what happens when you're in my business. Hello, Community Board 8, great to see all of you tonight. This is my 2nd event today with you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And actually our 3rd this week because we got to do the groundbreaking at a new gallery at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Ancient Near East. It's 40 years old. It's going to be completely redone. Going to be accessible. It's going to be amazing. So in 2 years, I think maybe we should do a community board meeting in that gallery. What do you say? Is it all right? Yeah, very, very popular. I am first and foremost here because I want to welcome our brand new board members. We've got no fewer than 5. You've probably already been giving them lots of love, but I am very proud of the new class of appointees we have across Manhattan this year. You know, we had 900 applications. And so it was very, very competitive. We really only had amazing people who we were able to appoint. Community Board 8 always has amongst the most applicants because you guys are great. So give it up for Todd T.J. Stein, Maximilian Meyer, Amir Jaffer, Sasha Sellum, and Sebastian Clark. We're going to go down and we're going to run down. Don't have a lot of you who applied to join or to continue serving, and we're very happy to also reappoint all of you. So applause for the returning members as well. You guys are great. When I was coming in, I heard that there's a lot of concern, Lou, about Memorial Sloan Kettering. And so I didn't get to hear all of your concerns, but what I would like to offer, I don't know if this is ad hoc residents or if it's a more organized group, but if you all could sort of collectively figure out a way to reach out, I'd be happy to meet with this, is it a coalition? Or is it more, just individual, what do you guys say?
Nathaniel?
I'm an individual, happy to be.
Okay, let's connect.
There's a whole bunch of them. You can, before the borough president leaves, maybe you might wanna just.
We can even
Step
chat in the
outside.
hall if you'd like, but, or we could do a more formal, I wanna hear you out, I didn't hear all the testimony. But, I neglected to introduce our brand new-ish community liaison for Community Board 8, Sawaba Shabazz, she's there, so, you'll see her, every month, I unfortunately can't make every board every month. Couple other announcements, so, this is a hybrid meeting, right? We've got folks participating on Zoom, it is a very important option for people who, for whatever reason, can't be here in person. And you should not take it for granted, because it's a deviation from the traditional open meetings law in New York. And it was done as an emergency during the pandemic, but what we have learned is that it's very, very good for community boards. How many people are on Zoom today?
25,
So that-
32.
So that's 32 people who might not have participated in this process otherwise. That law, was only, put in place until June 30th of this year. And we fought very, very hard, and your local assembly member, I wanna shout out Alex Forrest, really fought hard. And when the budget was passed in Albany, we got a 2-year extender on the status quo here. Without that, you would have to go back to exclusively in person. Now, that's not quite enough, because we want it to be indefinitely extended, but also we want some improvements to it. Veteran board members will know that it can be a challenge to get quorum, because while the people who are, virtual can vote, they do not count towards quorum. And, it can be very, very hard to achieve quorum. It doesn't seem like it's a problem here tonight, but it is a problem for some boards and some committees, so, there's legislation that Councilmember Boris has that would solve that problem. There's various versions that would even eliminate the in-person quorum so that everyone online can count. So stay tuned on that. Second, this is a neighborhood which has a large amount of rent stabilized apartments. And so for people who are in those units, you depend on the rent guidelines board to determine your rent every year. That's how it works. We are in game time on the rent guidelines board determining what will be next year's increases. And they do a process of hearings that are very important. They're often very rowdy, but it's really critical that the voice of tenants is heard there. Unfortunately, they did not schedule a hearing in Manhattan. And we pushed back hard on that, because it's not fair to say Manhattan tenants have to go to another borough, with all due respect. And we got a little bit of a victory here. Shout out to one of your council members, Keith Powers, who organized the letter on this. But there is now going to be a Manhattan hearing for RGB. I'm gonna try and give you the location. It's gonna be on June 11th, wrong side of Central Park. I'm sorry, it's on the west side. But I do want to tell you the location. If you'll just bear with me 1 second. I think it's gonna be the Ethical Culture School. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, it's gonna be at the New York Society for Ethical Culture on June 11th, on the Upper West Side. So if you're a rent stabilized tenant, or if you care about this issue, make your voice heard. It is important that people show up and speak, or at least support, tenants in this fight. And lastly, something a little more whimsical, which is that, I'm a very big advocate of opening more public bathrooms in New York City. We have way too few here, far fewer than other cities. And, there's a little bit of kind of underreported good news on that, which is the subways have now opened, approximately 60 public bathrooms. If you want to count men's and women's separately, about 120. So, but I bet you some of you didn't know that. Be honest, because it had not been promoted at all. So we're trying to get the MTA to do a map with all the bathrooms, to have signage, and even to make it part of the announcements. Right now, when you're on the car, they'll announce things like whether there's an elevator in that station, whether there are police officers on the platform. Why not tell us if there are bathrooms that are open, in the station. And by the way, I go on the menu. They're much better than you would think. They're well maintained. They've been renovated. When you need it and you're out there, it's a good option. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, CBA. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move directly to the public presentation from the City Planning Commission on the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. I believe the presentation is gonna take somewhere between 30 and 35 minutes. We may have time for a couple of questions. This is not the be all and end all of our extensive review of this part of the City of Yes. Anthony and his team on zoning development have done a great job so far, and we're gonna do more, but I wanted to point, if you have missed those sessions, you can go online and watch them. And we will continue to address this. We will have a special land use meeting where we will discuss the topic as we did with the City of Yes economic opportunities. Stay tuned. Okay.
When you're ready, sorry.
Hi everyone, my name is Oscar Morgan. I'm a site team leader in the Manhattan office, joined today by Ron Manson. And first I want to thank the city board for first inviting us to the presentation, but also Anthony for your 3 meetings that you led. That was incredible. I will try to do all of that in one presentation. So thank you for all the attention you guys have given to this proposal. I really appreciate it. This is the last of our City of Yes proposals. This is the biggest one, the most important one about housing. So really excited to talk to you about it and, just make sure everyone knows what it is, because that's our main goal here. We've been trying to do innovation sessions over the past year. And now we're going to all 59 community boards. Our goal is to make sure everyone in the city knows what's happening and they have a voice in the public process. So with that, I'm going to the next slide. All right, so City of Yes, it is a citywide tax amendment. This is to encourage incremental housing growth all over the city. Really, our goal here is to remove barriers to housing wherever possible in our zoning currently, and to build a little more housing everywhere. I know that, I've been hearing everybody's concerns that you voiced in the other community board meetings. And I want to try to address those throughout the presentation as much as possible. And one of the things that was brought up was really just like, where is this coming from? And that there wasn't, what is the analysis behind it? What is the data behind this? And it's, I just want to ensure everyone here that this is not something that just came out of nowhere this year. We've been working on this for years now. As far as back as 2020, when the Where We Live report came out, which is the city's fair housing plan, that really called for zoning changes that remove barriers for housing, and especially the idea of equitable housing. We've been working in the Department of Planning for years to figure out where, looking at the zoning to figure out how we can add housing, but also where some things that we need to fix in the existing zoning, or some things that are maybe outdated and they don't apply as much. So really clean up the zoning. If you ever looked at the zoning resolution, it's very simple. It's really not, it's thousands of pages long. It's been ad hoc added all over, over the years. And our goal is to simplify it as much as possible, make sure going forward that, it's very accessible and readable and everybody can kind of figure out what's happening. So that's another goal for the City of Yes. So it can seem like a big thing because it's trying to achieve these multiple things. All right. So why do we need more housing? That is a big question here. I think everyone here is aware that we are in a housing affordability crisis. Somebody in the public session earlier mentioned our vacancy rate is about 1.4%. And just to compare that, in Manhattan especially, the vacancy rate is about 2.3%. And comparing it to as recently as 2021, it was 10% then. So really, like, we felt the pressures, everything, everyday New Yorkers have felt the pressure of housing and especially housing affordability. And one of the biggest consequences of that is homelessness. In 2023, every night we had about 92,000 New Yorkers in homeless shelters. And that's just the reality of where we're at, and we're trying to address this in every way possible. And providing housing is one of the biggest ways to do that. The bottom line is that New York is not building enough housing. This chart here, you can see, that housing production over time in New York City, most of the New York City housing was created in the first half of the 20th century. And that's mostly because, one part of the puzzle of that is that at that time, zoning wasn't as restrictive. So over time, we've been, more restrictive since 1961, since zoning was introduced. And that restriction has led to fewer housing production because less gets built. And we're trying to fix that, to make it as, make sense for wherever all throughout the city, there's nuance, there's neighborhoods, and we're trying to make sure we're addressing all of those areas, not just the high density areas like Manhattan, but citywide, like including the lower, density and medium density, zone districts. So many city agencies, work on policies and programs that have kind of address housing needs. At the Department of City Planning, our main responsibility is the city zoning, and which is just one piece of the solution here. I know we have a few new board members and maybe some people from the public that might not be as familiar with zoning, but just in a nutshell, what zoning is trying to do and what it does is that it controls and regulates what can be built. So uses like residential, commercial, manufacturing, but it also controls how big a building can be. So those two things work together to sort of, shape our city. But again, zoning just sets the parameters, it sets the rules, sort of the outbound rules of like what can be done. It doesn't mandate that you must build a specific thing on a specific site. It's just like, if you're in a specific zoning district, what are the things you have in terms of options? And we're all about options, and we're going to talk about adding options to our zoning today as well. The one sort of thing that it can require in some instances is affordable housing. So we're really excited about that and expanding that as much as possible. But it doesn't fund housing, it doesn't sort of, control and mandate housing gets built. It just establishes those rules. But however, the city does have other tools that, we have different agencies that are working on different things that can sort of supplement that and promote housing. One of those is subsidies or tax incentives to promote infrastructure affordable housing, programs for affordable homeownership, and also tenant protections that guarantee, New York's rights. So this text amendment is the biggest pro-housing change that DCP has ever undertaken. I think that would be an understatement. It's really touching zoning in every single way. But sort of the main three portions of this, and the way I'm going to sort of represent this to you so it's understandable, is that we have low density proposals, then we have medium and high density proposals, and then finally we have sort of this larger citywide things that we're doing, including conversions of non-residential buildings or allowing small and shared apartments and just allowing for infill development where it makes sense. So I'm going to first go to the next slide, through the low density proposals. All right, so these do not apply to CB8, but it will give you an idea of the changes happening in the low density areas of the city. Primarily, this is in the outer boroughs, and it's part of our goal here of a little bit of housing everywhere. Also, CB8 will be voting on this tonight, so we want to make sure we know what you're voting on, even if it's not necessarily something that applies here. Whenever you're voting, I didn't mean to say that you're voting today.
We are not voting tonight.
But yeah, so really, for context, many of the low density neighborhoods, historically have had exclusionary zoning, and those rules have resulted in virtually it's made it pretty much impossible to build new housing and placing additional pressures on the high and medium density portion of the city. So we're trying to address that as part of this text amendment. Okay. Right, so the first thing we have is a town center proposal, which aims to create more missing middle housing in low density areas. Missing middle is a category of housing that's modest in scale and often affordable to middle income residents. Once common type of housing that's not often built in the city anymore. This proposal streamlines zoning rules, including restrictive limits on floor area and height, so that it is once again feasible to build 2 to 3 story housing above a commercial ground floor. Our second proposal is for missing middle as well is transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development would allow for low-rise buildings. These are, your 3 to 5 story buildings, depending on the underlying zoning, on sites that are near transit and meet specific criteria. In the rest of the low density areas, the proposal aims to give homeowners more flexibility. So under this proposal, a 1 or 2 family home would be allowed to add a small accessory dwelling unit or ADU. These small units would provide important housing options for small households, like a person moving into their own place for the first time, or an elderly resident who wants to age in place. And because of their small size, they also serve different income levels that than a large single family household. So in order to allow ADUs and also provide homeowners with the flexibility, we are adjusting rules in these low density districts. So in many areas, the existing buildings do not comply with the overly restrictive rules and cannot be altered for the needs of families. Additionally, in many designated 2-family and multi-family districts, the rules are so constraining that it's actually impossible to even build new housing except for single-family homes. So really adjusting these rules will allow homeowners to make alterations to their homes and allow people to actually build a 2-family home in a 2-family district or a multi-family home in a multi-family district. So really the original purposes of these districts, we're trying to make sure that that's actually doable. Next slide. All right, moving on to medium and high density districts proposal. So the first thing and sort of the biggest thing we have is, our universal affordability preference or UAP proposal. And this will allow buildings to add at least 20% more housing if the additional homes are permanently affordable. This includes supportive housing. So this is really exciting because this proposal is based on existing zoning rules that allow affordable housing for senior housing to already be bigger, they're 20% bigger than than most buildings and districts, and we're expanding that to now apply to all affordable and supportive housing, not just for seniors. And in some areas where the senior preference does not already exist, we are introducing that. So we're adding that option of a 20% bump floor area if you're adding affordable housing. And then to accommodate that, for 20% for bump in floor area, we're also allowing for limited increases in height where it's necessary to, have that on your site. So looking into what this means for CB8, you can see that the senior preference already exists on most avenues. This is shown in the lighter orange colors on this map. And we'll be expanding the 20% bump for permanently affordable housing to all the remaining areas. And so it doesn't really make sense whether you're in, on the avenue or on the inner streets. If you want to provide affordable housing, we're all for that. Okay, so one of the really big things here is that under UAP, we will have that any units that are over the market rate FAR will have to be affordable at an average of 60% area median income or AMI, which is a measure of affordability established by the federal government. Typically our voluntary inclusionary program is at 80%. This is an averaging of 60%. And what you can do with income averaging here is that not all units have to be exactly 60%. Some can be lower and some can be higher. but the average cannot be higher than 60%. And so this allows for us to create, a range of affordability, and it's not that, if you're not at a certain 60% cutoff, that you can't do it if you're like 61% at BMI, for example. So it's like, it provides that flexibility of like having a range of incomes within the building. Here you can see an example of what a building might look like under UAP. So without UAP, we have this 8-story apartment building, and with UAP, we have 2 more stories of permanently affordable housing. I'm not going to go through a couple of scenarios to illustrate how UAP would work in specific cases, and then talk about how it interacts with some of our existing programs, which you may be familiar with. Right, so the first example we have is of an UAP would function in the construction of new mixed income housing on the vacant site in R6 district. Just to note, the yellow on this drawing is showing the additional floor area that the property owner could build if they include affordable housing. But in reality, the affordable housing would be distributed throughout the building. We've been very intentional in ensuring there's no segregation of market rate and affordable housing units within buildings.
Can you just, for the uninitiated, what R6, the height limit is for an R6 building?
R6 is a non-contextual district, so it doesn't have an official height limit today.
Okay.
R6A, which is sort of its contextual counterpart, I believe you can get up to 75 feet
Okay.
Today.
Okay.
I think it's out of 8 feet.
Yeah. No, I know, but, okay.
We don't have any of that in our district.
Yeah.
But I thought this was for our district. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm showing a couple examples of how UAP will be used throughout. I have, right after this, I have RHB, so right in your district.
Okay.
All right, so in this example today, you will be able to get 3 FAR regardless of whether, you're developing market rate or affordable housing, and this would allow, this property owner to build about 35 units. But under UAP, they'd be able to get 30.9 FAR, and that extra FAR could only be for affordable housing. So if they can build, and with that, they can build about 10 to 12 affordable units. The building would also be allowed to be 10 feet taller than it would be today to accommodate that extra FAR. And then, hearing that, you might think 10 to 12 affordable units doesn't sound like a lot, but our goal again is a little bit of it everywhere. So if you imagine that throughout the city, and if it's 10 to 12 per lot everywhere, that's a lot of units. So that's, it's not about just concentrating them all in one place. It's really about spreading it out and making sure that we have affordable units throughout the city. All right, so let's looking at another example where we have a city-owned site in an RHB district. That's going to be an entirely affordable building. And I know CB8 is especially concerned about the RV mid-block zoning, so, you have, I wanted to make sure we include this example to show how these changes apply in CB8 specifically. Today, RV districts do not have a preferential FAR for senior housing, so this site today is limited to 47 units, no matter what kind of housing they're providing. We're proposing that RV districts and all of the districts with no existing senior housing preference receive a 20% bump of affordable housing. So in RHB, this means 4.8 FAR for affordable housing. The building would also be allowed to be 30 feet taller than it would be today. In this example, that translates to an additional 9 to 10 permanently affordable homes. Now, just to reiterate, this is only applicable when the property owner is providing affordable housing. The existing base heights aren't changing for market rate development in RHB districts. Okay. All right, so this table shows the proposed adjustments to FAR and height limits under UAP for R6 through R8. The basic FARs and current heights would remain for buildings that do not provide any affordable housing. Buildings would only be able to use the UAP FARs and heights if all the housing, above that basic FAR is affordable. And we want to make sure that every medium and high density zone district has a preference for affordable housing and make sure that the building envelopes can actually fit this affordable housing. We've sent this presentation, so I know this is a lot, so you can look at this in more detail later as well. These are the proposed FARs and heights for R9 through R12 districts. And Again, you can look at this in more detail later, but, you know, generally, the UAP height increase in CB8 is about 10 to 30 feet, depending on whether it's a contextual zoning district or not. So UAP is also replacing our existing voluntary inclusionary housing program, including the inclusionary housing designated areas and the R10 districts and equivalents. Like UAP, these are optional zoning tools to incentivize the creation of affordable housing. And as you can see on the map, this mostly covers avenues in the state. Today, UAP will extend the preference for affordable housing citywide to all medium and high density zoning districts. UAP also has other benefits compared to VIH. VIH has an AMI fixed at 80%, and while UAP has a much lower AMI of 60% and allows for income averaging. Currently, VIH can also only create housing for New Yorkers at 80% AMI, which is about 101,000 for a family of 3. So if you're not at that 80%, you're sort of out of luck. And with UAP, we'll be able to provide housing at a range of incomes due to the income averaging. Practically, this means that there could be a mix of homes at different income levels, including more deeply affordable units and slightly higher income units. This table on the slide shows an example of what that mix could look like. Okay, so the proposal is also making some updates to the Mandatory Inclusionary Housing Program, or MIH. For those not familiar with MIH, this is the only program we have that mandates or requires affordable housing in conjunction with certain actions. So in any site where we are significantly increasing the residential capacity, we can map MIH to require that 20 to 30% of the floor area of residential development is income restricted. First, this proposal would allow for MIH option 3 to be a standalone option. MIH option 3 requires that there be a 20% set aside at an average of 40% AMI. Our proposal will also equalize MIH FARs with UAP FARs, where those are higher. So for example, in our 6A districts, the MIH FAR will change from 3.6 to 3.9. And it's important to note that the options will remain in place, meaning that the same percentage of affordability will continue to be required. Finally, we're proposing to streamline rules for 100% affordable projects. Under the new regime, 100% affordable projects would not be subject to overlapping and conflicting requirements in the zoning text. So a proposal would be exempt 100% affordable homeownership for projects from rules that prevent them from penciling out. The current MIH program is also incompatible with tools that facilitate homeownership. So returning to our scenarios, I'll walk through an example of how the UAP proposal interacts with a mandatory inclusionary housing area. Let's say there's a site in our 7A district and it was recently rezoned and is subject to MIH. The current maximum MIH FAR is 4.6 FAR, which on this site results in about 54 units, but depending on the MIH area, 25 to 30% of the units would require to be affordable. Because the UAP FAR in our 7A district is 5 FAR, the MIH FAR will also be raised to 5, and the affordability requirements will remain in place. So in this scenario, that would mean approximately 59 total units would be created, and 25 to 30% of those would be permanently affordable. Okay. All right, moving on to our citywide proposals. First is we are including the creation of new zoning districts above 12 FAR. For those who might not be as familiar, the state recently lifted the 12 FAR cap on residential uses, which we are really excited about. Before this cap lift, we had non-residential zoning districts that could be built up to 15 or 18 FAR, but residential FAR was capped at 12. So with the cap lift, we're able to introduce those similar FARs to residential use as well. Now, this doesn't mean we're mapping these districts anywhere. We're simply adding it to the zoning resolution so that they're able to be mapped in the future where appropriate. The maximum FAR for R11 and R12 districts will be 15 and 18 FAR respectively. And these zoning districts can only be mapped with mandatory inclusionary housing. So in addition, the proposal would also create 2 new medium density districts, R62 and R6D. These new districts are proposed, intended to fill the gap in the existing spectrum of zoning districts that we have. This proposal would also make it easier to add contextual infill on campuses and other irregular or challenged sites. Previous campus development often took place under tower in the park style regulations called height factor. And although DCP has developed a more recent set of regulations for contextual buildings that have height limits and result in better designs, some sites like larger campuses can't access those new rules. So the proposed change would allow highly limited contextual infill on sites that would otherwise be forced to develop tall, skinny buildings or nothing at all. A variety of these changes would also address barriers faced by irregular challenge sites, making more sites eligible for contextual envelopes. So again, those familiar campus sites are defined as sites 1.5 acres or larger, or sites that have full control of the block. In medium and high density areas, the proposal would do 2 things. First, it would replace mixing rules that prevent zoning lots developed with height factor buildings from adding contextual height limited buildings. Second, it would align the distance between building rules with the existing multiple dwelling law. So in practice, this means that a 40-foot distance between buildings must be maintained, or for buildings that are over 125 feet, the distance must be at least 80 feet between buildings. Okay, let's next talk about the sliver law. I know we have some of the early advocates of the sliver law in the room today. So it was really exciting, but for those who are not familiar with the sliver law, essentially this was introduced in zoning at a time when we didn't have height limits. And it was a way, in a way it was ahead of its time in that it imposed height limits on narrow lots, less than 45 feet, to be limited to the width of the street. So on a side street, that building on a narrow lot could only be 30 foot tall. Today, however, all districts in the city either have height limits or allow for a height limit option to be built. So
Not true.
while it
Not true.
Not true.
Especially in this district. I'm surprised you're saying.
We're happy to take questions on that after Oscar's done. Thanks.
Oh, well, okay, she's just saying.
all districts, I just want to repeat so it's clear what I'm saying. All districts have height limit, or either have height limits or allow for a height limit option. And that's what I'm saying. So to be clear. So while it's
Okay, everybody, we know, okay.
So
We'll save our questions for later.
while the sliver law served its purpose when it was introduced, with contextual zoning now in place, we don't see the same need for this law. However, it won't completely go away. It's just being replaced by height limited contextual envelopes and will continue to apply when height limits don't. All right, so similar to the previous proposal I talked about, limited height districts date back to the late 1960s and prior to the advent of special districts and contextual zoning, and represent a particularly archaic way of limiting height in some of the city's wealthier areas. More recent zoning tools have rendered options of these districts largely moot. So, for example, all the limited height districts in CB8 shown on this map are within contextual RIP districts, which already have a height limit in place. So we're proposing to remove limited height districts from the zoning text altogether. The next proposal would remove outdated rules to allow for more small and shared apartments. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we're all about adding more options to our zoning. So, which means, allowing buildings with only simple no-frill studios, as well as homes with private bedrooms, but shared kitchens and other common facilities. These building types have historically played an important role in New York's housing landscape, especially for young working New Yorkers. And new and shared apartments can provide important housing choices for New Yorkers, especially the marginalized housed New Yorkers and people who would prefer to live alone but can't afford to do that. Today, we're forcing many people into living situations they don't want. So in some cases, that includes doubling up in an overcrowded unit, or, because of the lack of our housing options, it also forces young professionals to team up with roommates and occupy family-sized units. Our current zoning does not have a clear path for building shared housing, so housing opportunity would create clear rules and make the process less complex to enable fuller range of housing options. These updated rules would make it possible to build shared housing in any multifamily zoning district. The proposal would also enable the development of new construction shared housing, including affordable shared housing. We're also seeking to legalize existing unregulated shared housing, and allowing for small apartments by changing a rule called dwelling unit factor, which requires buildings to have a minimum average dwelling size. The proposal would eliminate dwelling unit factor in transit-rich areas and reduce it everywhere else. So in addition to the small and shared housing modifications, we're also proposing some zoning changes to enable more conversions. First, we'll change the eligible geography from business districts in Manhattan and limited areas in Queens and Brooklyn to the entire city. This will allow for the conversion of buildings beyond just large offices, but also things like schools or former religious buildings. And second, we'll allow more recent buildings to have access to our more flexible reuse regulations. Today, a building must be built prior to 1961 or 1977, depending on what part of the city it's in, to use the more flexible conversion rules, but we'll move that cutoff date up to 1990, allowing for more of the underused buildings from the 70s and 80s to actually convert to housing as well. And finally, our current adaptive reuse regulations only applies when non-residential buildings is converting to traditional apartments. But office workplace, for example, may actually work better for other kinds of housing, like shared housing or dorms, which will now be allowed under new regulations. The next proposal I'm going to talk about is the expansion of the existing landmark transfer development rights program. The landmark TDR program was created in the 1960s to relieve the financial burdens on designated landmarks, which are subject to maintenance requirements and limited in their ability to redevelop or add a new building on the lot. This proposal would extend transfer opportunities to allow transfer to other zoning lots on the same block as the landmark or immediately across the street or an intersection from the block. The diagram on the slide shows the current program on top and the proposed expansion below. This would bring on a lot more transfer opportunities for these landmarks that are desperately seeking to, use those rights to be able to redevelop and use them for their maintenance. The proposal would also streamline the approval process, requiring a certification when no bulk modification is necessary to accommodate the transfer on the receiving side, and an authorization when an applicant is seeking bulk modifications. Currently, the program is also not available for landmarks in historic districts or in low-density zoning districts, which are R1 to R5, and we would expand the program to be applicable to landmarks, to these areas as well. The goal here is really to help generate revenue to maintain these landmarks, which we all love, and we also want to see, in addition to that, the possibility of unlocking additional housing opportunities. This next amendment would also eliminate required parking minimums in new buildings. These rules already exist in most of Manhattan. Mandated parking is extremely expensive to provide, and parking mandates drive up rents and prevent new housing from being built. It's important to note that parking will still be allowed, and projects can add the amount of parking that they believe is appropriate for that location. So, turning now to the special districts. So New York City has a diverse area of special districts that have been enacted to further neighborhood planning goals. As a general approach, the current proposal carries through any relevant changes to the special districts in order to ensure that these areas also have appropriate housing opportunities. The current proposal may be modified where the changes directly conflict with the special district's goals. For instance, in many special districts, they have FARs that differ significantly from the underlying zoning, like R8 in portion of the special Clinton district. In those instances, the new UAP FAR would build on the special district FAR rather than simply eliminating it. The proposal takes a similar approach when considering the interactions of other components and the special rules contained in special districts. So in CB8, we have 2 special districts that are being modified to support our housing goals. In both these districts, the proposal is aiming to align the special district to enable income restricted housing through UAP. It would allow sites participating in the UAP framework to have the higher maximum building height that other contextual R10A districts have to be able to fit that 20% FAR increase. In addition, the basic maximum building height in the district would be updated to 215 to align with the R10A districts. And both of these districts were mapped at a time when we didn't have contextual zoning, so we're also cleaning up some of the redundant slope regulations that now exist in the underlying. That concludes the overview proposal within this text amendment. I know there's a lot of detail. We can come back to any section we want and answer questions. Before moving on, just want to say that the changes that I've walked through tonight are the most significant proposal of the city of Yes housing opportunity. But overall, this text amendment is aimed to create a little more housing everywhere so that each neighborhood does its part to address their housing needs. It's not just about housing though, it's also more about types of housing, so multifamily housing where it's currently not allowed, because of inclusionary zoning or homes of different sizes to meet different people's needs, and crucially, more affordable and supportive housing.
I just want to say thank you very much. You may notice when you go through your tablet that the slides that you have didn't exactly match up with the presentation. That's because it was loaded up before you guys came, so I guess we would get an updated.
Oh, it's already on the website.
It's already on the website, so.
And if you downloaded it from the website, you already had it in your materials.
So, we're gonna have to take some time for questions. We won't be able to answer, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to set a timer?
Yeah, I think we'll take questions until 8 o'clock. So, let's see. I'm gonna start at the back first. Elizabeth Rose.
Almost ready to get them.
Valerie.
No,
So I have one very specific question and one conceptual question. The very specific question is the increase in height limits, in various zones are not proportionate. This was something that we saw very clearly in the zoning and development committee. The proposed increase in the height limit in an R8B district, for example, is about a 30% increase, whereas the height limit in other zoned districts is more like a 10 or a 20% increase. Why are these out of proportion with the increase in the FAR?
That's a great question. By the way, I'm John Mangan, Director of the Housing Division and City Planning. It's good to be here tonight. So some districts are tighter than other districts. The underlying principle that animates all the changes for the districts is we want envelopes to be able to accommodate the allotted FAR on a fairly typical mid-block site with about 15% of flexibility to account for irregularities you might see on lots that aren't that, ideal mid-block site, but also to account for architectural expression too. What we've seen in past decades is that when you have really tight envelopes, you have these like super flat buildings that are just kind of ugly. And so that's the principle that animates all of those, 15% flexibility on mid-block site.
Would posit that this community district is probably less thrilled with that as a concept and would prefer to keep our districts or zone tighter. Now for the conceptual one, and I've done a visual aid because I don't know how else to explain this, and it will remind some of those that yes, I was a TA in statistics in business school. So if you assume that there is basically a curve from sort of low density districts to high density districts, and that this represents the full housing stock, are you basically trying to just lift the entire curve in the same shape that it's in so that everything goes up proportionately to where it is today? Or alternatively, people who live in very high density districts like ours probably think it would be more fair for the city to actually try to change the shape of the curve and increase density in lower density districts relatively more than the increase in density in already high density districts. What's your conceptual goal here? And
Great general question. As you understand, higher density areas are starting from a higher base.
Yeah.
And so the rate of increase tends to be smaller in higher density areas than it is in low density areas. For instance, if you're in a single family district today, and all you can do is a single family home, we're enabling ADUs in those districts. That's effectively 100% increase on what you can do on that lot. Similarly, missing middle, to enable modest multifamily housing on opportune locations in low density sites. For instance, low density commercial districts or large sites on wide streets near transit. In some instances there, you're going from a 0.6 FAR to 1 FAR, or you're going from a 1 FAR to a 2 FAR to enable modest multifamily buildings. So I would say it's closer to the second concept you showed.
try to change the shape.
And we didn't think about it through that framework, but it is in effect closer to the second.
Okay, hands up. Okay, now we'll go to the front. Anthony.
Okay, hi. One general question and then, one very general question. Are you, I know you were hoping that that when we do vote on this, we say, oh yes, we love all of it. But how seriously will you take our rejection of portions of the proposal?
It's a great question. We did an innovation that some of you may have noticed for economic opportunity, where we actually created a workshop or worksheet where community boards can comment on individual components. And we took all that data, we made bar charts, we looked at them we looked at them with the deputy mayor to understand specifically what portions of these big and complicated proposals people like, which ones people don't like, and which ones fall in between. So we created a worksheet like that as well. I don't know if you have it already, but it's on our City of Yes for Housing Opportunity website. And we hope that you will use that in providing feedback because it is really meaningful to us.
Yes, we're going to use it next week. So we need to develop.
Okay, that's a preview and a commercial. Okay.
Okay. And then one other thing that was new, based on what we saw tonight, which are the R11, R11A, and R12 zones. Now, you said they will. You don't know where they're going to be, but they will be where they're appropriate. Where might they be appropriate? And then there's a follow-up question.
Well, again, this is not to say we're doing this.
No,
but something like Midtown, I mean, those densities exist in commercial spaces already, so it doesn't make sense why it wouldn't be allowed for the same density in a residential building, so that's the thinking here, like, they already exist, you can only do commercial without density, but if you just make it residential, same thing.
So it would be unthinkable to the Department of City Planning that, for instance, Park Avenue or the non-landmark portions of Fifth Avenue, to be rezoned to R12.
Yeah, we're prohibited under state law, from going above 12 FAR in historic districts, for instance.
All right, how about Third Avenue?
Golly, the most that we can say, and even that I think is going out over our skis, is in districts where other uses can go above 12 today. But we really are not thinking about applying this, in places like you mentioned today.
And what would stop you from doing that? What would be in the law?
Well, so the state law has certain conditions, gotta go through Euler, gotta have MIH, not in historic districts. Can't redevelop lots with JLWQAs, and some other stuff. And some other stuff. So, but, we have to go through the process in order to enact those.
Okay.
Last question, Anthony, because we don't.
No, this is just a comment, I think that the concept of a zoning resolution overhaul is the absolute right thing to be doing. Not that I agree with all of the particulars, but the zoning resolution is almost 65 years old, and it's about 40 years too old.
All right, Marco, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Nice to meet you in person.
Good to
I
meet you,
did
good
read
to see
it.
you in person as well. We
Yes.
talked over
I know that your theoretical knowledge is very impressive. I was very impressed. But in the practical level now, that's
Hold on. Here, can you?
No, you can,
But people can't hear.
Okay, please. Thank you.
this is deaf.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me start with one of your statements in one of the presentations that you did. What? That is your quote. Bad zoning forces people to build tall and skinny buildings that sometimes drives neighborhoods crazy, end of quote. So my point is, you have the study that I did on the Upper East Side. It was 14 developments, and none of them, they demolished affordable houses in relation 1 to 9. So for every one affordable housing that you build, 9 is demolished. And the building affordable housing is in R8, R10-8 in a contextual district. And the issue right here is, I would like to know, what is the deficit of affordable housing in this entire city? Because with the affordable housing, then we know exactly what is the problem. Second, you know that in the mid-block, you just heard from the board president, and he's right, that mid-block is full of rent control and rent stabilization housing. So you are planning to propose this increase, so you wanted to encourage the owners of buildings to demolish those buildings. And because you propose so to increase in high unemployed area. So if not, your recommendation is basically to transfer the air rights to the avenues. And when you transfer to the avenues, it comes into a taller and taller buildings. In my findings, I found that the transfer of the air rights in these developments going from 13.22 to 20.13 and the maximum is 10. And now, not only that, yes, you preserve affordable housing, but you preserve substandard of housing, because when they transfer the air rights, nobody does anything in those developments. So you're going in the direction to create substandard housing, while R10-8 produce high standard of housing. I think this is one of the best programs that I see.
Okay.
I think
Give him a chance to answer.
on my time.
I'll get it back.
What was the question? That's right.
How are you gonna make up the affordable housing deficit?
What is the deficit?
Gotcha.
And what is it?
We are extremely, this is without a doubt, the biggest proposal to create income restricted affordable housing, that we've ever had in the city. For instance, in medium and high density districts, that's where we are today. We have an inclusionary framework, either voluntary or mandatory, that applies over about 13% of medium and high density districts. Outside of that, zoning doesn't get you any affordable housing at all. What UAP does is it takes that inclusionary framework and it extends it across all medium and high density districts in one fell swoop. I don't know if you caught it on the slide there, but if UAP had been in place since 2014 in New York City, we would have seen an additional 20,000 income restricted units at an average of 60% AMI. That's more than all inclusionary housing programs have created in New York City since the 1980s, since the advent of them in the 1980s. So if you support affordable housing, this is orders of magnitude bigger than anything that we've ever done before. Would it encourage demolition of rent stabilized housing? Or I talked to HCR does not permit the demolition of occupied rent stabilized apartments, nor can you involuntarily push somebody out. I've talked to Simon Melnitsky at HCR every year just to confirm that that's still the case, and it remains the case. So if you care about affordable housing and income restricted affordable housing, not just rent stabilized. We love rent stabilized, but landlords just cream the heck out of the tenants. They're still gonna take a tenant with $200,000, income and 850 credit score. If you care about income restricted housing for families that really need it, this is the greatest thing that has ever happened to you.
Okay, except we've seen that, you're saying occupied housing, but we've seen it on the Upper East Side, they just pay off the tenants and they leave. In millions of dollars.
So no that's not involuntary.
Well, I know,
eviction.
but involuntary versus voluntary is a very subjective and easily surmountable hurdle. So let's go to Sahar. Sahar, go ahead.
Sorry, you can unmute.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. This was a great presentation. And I really like about, obviously I'm in favor of more affordable housing, but I have a couple of questions. One is, since you're proposing that the units will be increased, and so obviously the floors will increase, how does that, especially in high density, and especially where we are, CB8 is, with the environment? I didn't see anything mentioned in your presentation about how it impacts the environment, which it heavily does when we go beyond. The other question, and I'm going to ask both my questions, you can answer them one by one. The other question I had was, I saw that you're saying that in your proposal about parking spots, that you're taking that mandatory parking but for each building, you're taking that off. We, at least in our area, and I don't have a car, by the way, so I'm just mentioning that, that if we have less compulsory parking spaces in the buildings, then we have more of a crisis for that, because we already don't have enough parking spots, we don't have enough garages. So if you're saying that the new developments that are coming up don't have that mandatory requirement, how does that impact that part of our area too?
Great questions. On parking, I'll do it in reverse order. Community District 8 already has no parking requirements for new housing. You guys are real pioneers. You haven't had parking requirements for new housing for over a decade now. And now we're extending that, we're proposing to extend it anyway citywide. In terms of impact, this is also the biggest environmental review we've ever done in city history, working with a full range of city agencies on potential adverse impacts across the range of categories, whether it's water and sewer or school seats or open space or what have you. Again, the approach here, a little bit of housing everywhere, does a lot of work. In no neighborhoods do we expect a ton of new housing like you see in a neighborhood rezoning. In fact, we just published our DEIS a couple weeks ago. We found that the impacts of this proposal comprise an average of less than 1 unit per acre over 15 years. Less than 1 unit per acre over 15 years. But because the city is so big, we got a 200,000 acre city here, we can achieve on the upper range 110,000 additional units without, while still hitting an average of less than 1 unit per acre over 15 years. And that definitely keeps down any type of environmental impacts that you typically see with a neighborhood rezoning when you have 8,000 units in a narrow geography.
Thank you. I have a quick question and then another sort of comment. I've been hearing about Open New York. What is the relationship with it? Do you work together or are they conflicting?
So I'll say, we've been working on City of Yes for Housing Opportunity for, largely, as Aska said, since 2020. These emerged from Where We Live, our fair housing reports. In the last year, I have met with well over 100 organizations from across the spectrum, from people who might be really into this set of proposals, like Open New York, to people who might be really skeptical of it, like, preservation organizations. I want to say, because of that approach, a little bit of housing everywhere, we've seen new openness to this from organizations that are sometimes skeptical of things we do. Like, for for instance, Historic Districts Council, like MAS, Elizabeth Goldstein wrote an op-ed in favor of this. And so we definitely have met with a full range of stakeholders, and they're just one among many stakeholders.
Okay, so just a quick comment, where we live, and particularly, I live on 87th and Second, there's a rare block that either hasn't emptied out their buildings of what would be affordable housing and not built, kept them closed up, or actually raised them with a Z, and haven't built. I mean years. I mean, one was 20 years, many way before COVID. So when they said that we haven't developed it, it's because they're not being developed. I didn't know whether it's because of the tax incentive was taken away. Is it because financing is very hard? Are they waiting for City of Yes to come to fruition? Why is it that we are not getting the buildings of all these empty sites that have taken away all of our affordable units? They're ugly, they're boarded up. Okay.
Can you answer that?
I don't know the particulars of that situation, but when we hear about things like that, we love it when people send us the addresses so that we can take a look.
We'll send you a book of addresses.
We've had people at other meetings talk about vacant buildings and ask us what the situation is. We're curious too, because we're always trying to learn more about the types of things that pose obstacles to new housing development. So I would love it if you follow up with us and with Austin.
Can I send it to Will and he'll send it?
Yeah, that sounds great.
We're gonna take 3 quick questions. First here, and then we're gonna go to Zoom, and then we're gonna go to the back, and that's it.
Thank you for the presentation. Okay. Could you explain how this will impact the cost of living in New York?
Well, I would say that the largest portion of cost of living in New York City is housing. And, you know, folks who are looking for housing these days recognize how soul-crushing an experience that is. And the biggest driver of things like high rents or high housing costs generally is the fact that we're stuck at a 1.41 net rental vacancy rate, for instance, that landlords have all the power, they recognize that tenants don't have any options, and so that plays out in various ways. You know, like the gentleman on the Zoom earlier said, landlords know that tenants don't have options, they can raise the rent with impunity. They can rent out, you know, apartments that are under-maintained. They don't have to be responsive when your bathroom ceiling falls in, things like that. And so one of the biggest, you know, broadest goals of this is to try to change the feel of the housing market, to create enough new housing, 110,000 additional units over 15 years, that just make the housing market feel different. And one of the ways that it does that it feels different, is that maybe you can actually afford an apartment of sufficient size in a convenient location. And that's meaningful. And that expresses itself through rents. And so that's, you know, the fundamental stat that we would like to see, you know, improve.
Thanks. We're gonna take 2 in the room. We're gonna do Sandrea and then Adam, and then we're gonna end with Rita. But I just wanna urge everyone, if you have a question that didn't get answered, just email it to me and Will, and I hope we can send them to you, and then hopefully get some feedback before our next meeting. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Valerie. Greetings, my name is Sandra Coleman. I have 2 quick questions that I know you can answer quickly. What parts of a campus will infill be considered? And I have a little commentary. I know infill is problematic for stakeholders because it distorts the land. It can possibly block sunlight, potentially take away land, and disturbs already bad air quality. It also will have a negative psychological impact on those who are directly impacted. My second question, will there be a study done regarding infill to see about the psychological impact? So 2 questions.
That's a great question. On infill, today we're seeing, you know, campus sites or even zoning lots with existing buildings that have available development rights, that have footprint for new housing, but where certain types of zoning obstacles get in the way. Like for instance, if you have a campus or a zoning law with an existing building, if the existing building is too tall, then you're not allowed to do modern height limited infill on that site. So we prevent those sites from doing anything other than, you know, a tall, skinny 1961 building from zoning from 1961, when we were gonna clear all these super blocks and do towers in a park under urban renewal. And so we're trying to create opportunities on the margin. The types of campus infill that we see today, you know, I've been in city planning about 10 years. I've done dozens of mayoral zoning overrides for NYCHA campuses so that they can put 100% affordable senior on an empty parking lot. We are trying to get the zoning obstacles out of the way so that we can see more of that without 2 and 3 years of process. And when I've seen those 100% senior buildings on NYCHA campuses, you create new housing for families that are stuck in older 3 bedrooms. For instance, you know, you might have a single old empty nester in a 3-bedroom apartment. They can get a new apartment. You can free up a 3-bedroom for a family that's been on the waiting list for 8 years. So these are the types of things that we're looking forward to. And I think that has huge psychological benefits for people who get to live in that new housing. But we don't have any plans to do a study. City planning is, you know, is not equipped to do study of that sort.
Yes, about the people, I know how to say it. Yes, about the people that will benefit from it. What about the people that were there? We fought infill in 2015 for 4 years in Holmes County and stopped them from taking away a playground and actually putting a 50-story building, which was double the size of our building. It's horrible. It's easy to say what's good, but there's open lot. There's so many properties that can be taken, but when you all go to 19 campuses, that's a problem. That is a big problem.
I mean, that was the types of infill that we've seen on campuses create new housing for people to live in, and also can create revenue to repair existing housing on those campuses too. So existing residents can benefit as well. That's not to say it's not a pain to have a development site on your campus. It's not to say that, you know, maybe you would prefer to maintain the open space, but there definitely are benefits for existing residents too.
Okay, go ahead.
I have 2 questions related to inclusionary housing. I know that we don't really have a designated inclusionary mapped in the CD8, but if you're in designated inclusionary housing, where technically you say you're in R7A and your basic maximum FAR of 4 shifted down to 3.45, are we now overwriting the inclusionary housing text and that 3.45 will be restored to a 4?
That's exactly right. We're proposing to replace the voluntary inclusionary housing programs with UAP, a simple uniform framework. A couple of things there. Under the old IH program, you got a market rate bonus when you provided affordable, so you weren't capped at 3.45 anyway. You could get up towards 4 in the first place. Second, and the thing that council members seem really excited about, housing advocates seem really excited about, those old voluntary programs, 80% and only 80% AMI. A glut of units, if you didn't earn, 79% AMI, you couldn't even apply for that unit. With UAP, we're driving that AMI down to 60 and we're enabling income averaging. So we'll see units for families at a range of incomes. And that is just seen as such a better situation than the existing voluntary programs that we haven't seen any pushback from that yet.
My other question regarding inclusionary housing is, and it applies to CD8, is if you're in a C19 or a C28 and you have, you're acquiring offsite inclusionary, but say you haven't finished your development envelope, are you gonna be precluded from building the full development when UAP comes into place?
So you raise a really great question. The 2 districts you mentioned are R10 equivalents. Today, R10s have their own little special inclusionary program that includes an offsite option where you can buy certificates, that is buy credits from affordable housing developments elsewhere in the city. We do not want to take anything away from people. We don't want to take any options away from people who have it today. So while UAP in general will not include an offsite option, i.e. you gotta have your affordable housing on your zoning lot, in areas where offsite exists today, we propose to keep it around for 10 years.
Thank you.
So use it or lose it.
Okay, go to Rita.
Rita, you can unmute.
Hi, great presentation. I always like to see things come to fruition. I have excellent colleagues who have beaten me to the pulp because I was a Mitchell-Lama person looking for a Mitchell-Lama too. And I have been told the land is too expensive. Now, everything that you are proposing, who's going to pay for the land? I mean, you're just, right, are we dealing in real numbers or are we dealing in hopeful numbers? And how do you get the land? And what about adding 6 tenements together? And what else could you build? We know about air rights. We know about all of this. And we know that the key here is affordable housing. 60% of affordable housing doesn't get a brand new school teacher eligible to live in that house. He only makes about $62,000. The same thing for a nurse. So I want your program to be successful, but I also want to go in with my open eyes. How are you getting the land? Mitchell-Lama was urban renewal. Thank you.
That's a great question. So, you know, you go back to Mitchell-Lama, you go back to a time in New York City where we had a lot of public land. You know, where maybe we had in-rem properties that we got through tax foreclosure, or maybe you just had land that we owned from decades prior. And so for years in New York City, the name of the game around housing policy and affordable housing was, what do we do with all this public land we have? That was like the story of the Koch administration into the 90s. We don't have a lot of land anymore. So zoning programs today have to figure out ways to create affordable housing with privately owned land and privately financed developments. And so that's where things like the inclusionary programs come in. That's where UAP comes in as well. And so we, you know, people own land, people have owned land for a long time. Ultimately, the value of land depends on what you can do with it, what you can build with it. And so we are, you know, we're certain that some folks will be able to build in this community district under these proposals and create UAP affordable housing. An average of 60% AMI means that you're getting 30% units, new 2-bedrooms that rent for $1,000 a month. That you're getting 60% units, new 2-bedrooms that rent for $2,000 a month. 90% units, new 2-bedrooms that rent for about $3,000 a month. And that hits families at a range of incomes. And I do think we are for the first time gonna be creating units through zoning that are for a school teacher, or that for a nurse, or for a service, you know, industry employee. And we're excited about that.
Okay, I just want to ask the last question, I lied. So the only component of the COYHO that requires the rent regulated housing is the universal affordability program, which I think we've all said, we've used the word optional and voluntary all night tonight. So, and this community really wants affordable housing. So this rent regulated housing, the way I understand it, has to be provided at an average AMI of 60%, and that would be permanent. So while we really support low AMIs and permanent affordable housing, it's not clear that most or even any market rate developer active in our district would use this optional program. Affordable units at 60% are expensive to operate, generally requiring subsidies to pencil out. If the entire floor area benefit goes to permanently affordable housing that loses money every year, can you tell us why any developer that develops on the Upper East Side would use it?
Sure. The answer is, the not so secret of affordable housing in the zoning is that it always depends on some external means of financial support. Sometimes that's subsidy from HPD for 100% affordable buildings. More often, that means support from a tax benefit. And so while we were devising this set of proposals, we were the whole time, you know, sweating bullets, crossing our fingers and everything else, that we would get support from the state. That is a tax benefit that would work well with UAP, so that when you use them both together, you get more and better affordability than either alone. And so anytime somebody does multifamily rental in the city, we expect them to use the tax benefit. If they're using the tax benefit, we expect them to use UAP, which will drive affordability levels down to the average of 60% AMI in a way that, again, creates more and better affordability. So this is decades of us learning how to use zoning with tax policy in order to create these permanently affordable units.
So are you saying that 485X would be effective in our district? Because my understanding is that's not the case.
Yeah, we actually are extremely excited about where 45X ended up at the state level. You know, we are hearing some grumbling from developers about it, but they're gonna grumble, you know? There's the affordability requirements, which work very well with UAP. There's labor requirements as well. It is in their nature to grumble about it. We expect to see a lot of new housing, and a lot of new affordable housing.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you taking the rapid fire questions. And, thank you again for coming this evening. We will follow up, so I'm assuming everyone's on their email right now, sending Will and I your questions while they're uppermost in your mind. And, we will move on in the agenda as we continue our full board meeting. Okay, so. Where are we?
What did I just find?
Okay, give me a minute.
Okay, do we have any other decisions left?
I don't think, are there any elected official, reps in the room? Come on up. You get 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks for coming in, for sitting with us, you get 2 minutes.
And yeah, if you're on Zoom, you'll get 1 minute, raise your hand, and we'll call in. Yeah.
Hey, good evening. I'm Kevin Rogers. I work for Governor Kathy Hochul. Tonight I'm going to be throwing on a separate hat, be doing an update for you all. So there's a few things I wanted to touch upon related to the governor's recently enacted state budget. The first I wanted to touch upon is affordable housing. And, you know, the governor's kind of directive for this is build, build, build. So to mitigate the city and the state's low housing stock, there are a few top line things I just wanted to touch upon tonight that will help accomplish increasing the state's housing stock. The first is to require that localities receive pro-housing community certification, which will enable access to up to $650 million in state discretionary funding. The next is 500 million in capital funds dedicated to developing up to 15,000 housing units on state-owned property. The next is legislation to increase the housing supply in New York City, including new tax incentives, authority for the city to lift outdated residential density restrictions, and incentives to encourage affordable housing in the office conversion and a path towards legalizing basement and cellar apartments. The last I wanted to touch upon is legislation to increase protections for affordable housing providers by prohibiting insurance carriers from raising premiums on property owners based on tenant source of income. Another top line thing I wanted to touch upon next to housing is public safety. And I know that this is a concern for most people in most community districts. So the governor increased investment in programs to prevent and reduce gun violence this year. She restored the effectiveness of the continuum of the criminal justice system. And particularly, she addressed retail theft and bringing relief to small businesses. I know I ran out of time, but okay, all right, thank you.
You missed out on the trip to Rome.
I did miss out on the trip to Rome.
Finish your report.
All right, so last I wanted to touch upon was the governor's initiative to kind of crack down on illegal cannabis stores. Yes, thank you, thank you.
See, you ended with the best.
That was the plan all along.
Legal.
Exactly. So OCM will now be authorized to padlock businesses immediately following an inspection if they're selling illegal cannabis and pose an imminent threat to health and safety for the following reasons. It includes a plethora of things, but includes sales to minors, unlicensed possessing, violent conduct, presence of unlawful fire alarms, etc. And it elevates penalties against landlords who fail to take action against violating tenants. And most importantly, empowers local governments, including New York City, to act under state enforcement provisions. So those are really my things I want to mention tonight. I'm alum of Assemblymember Seawright's office, and she was great. in helping the governor kind of accomplish a lot of this year. And, most importantly, I spent, a little while in the office listening to a lot of you come in and giving us a lot of feedback on, how to change the community and kind of accomplish a lot of this stuff. So, I hope we delivered well for you and we'll continue, in these efforts, in the years to come. But thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, who's next? On Zoom, 1 minute.
All right. Audrey Cannon, you're up first, then Jesse, you'll be next.
Okay, thanks. I'll be quick and I'm gonna keep with the housing theme. As the budget, as you know, was a mixed bag, some good, some disappointing, but one thing that came across was the good cause eviction law. We hope you'll spread this around. We've got a lot of market rate tenants in Community Board 8 to make sure everyone knows about this and is informed about it. We will be doing a town hall. Dylan, if you're still on this, June 20th. It'll be on Zoom, 6:30 to 8. Call our office, Dylan, if you're still there, 212-490-9535. If you've got questions about good cause, it might help you and a lot of other market rate tenants. Thanks, have a good meeting, and welcome to the new community board members.
Thanks, Audrey. Jesse?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Just a couple quick updates. Just wanted to thank everyone who joined the Local Law 97 info session last week. I think it was super successful, and just wanted to thank all of our partners as well, including the Adams administration, the NYC Accelerator, the Department of Buildings, Con Ed, and NYSERDA. And if there is anyone who was not able to join us, please feel free to reach out directly to our office if there are any questions regarding Local Law 97. Last week, the council started hearings on the executive budget for fiscal year 2025. In the coming weeks, there will be executive budget hearings for each council committee where they will hear from the city's agencies on their fiscal needs. Members of the public are able to testify on any particular hearing if they would like to. And if you're interested in registering to testify at one of the upcoming hearings, I will post the link in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse.
Where's Jesse from?
That's Chief Powers' office.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thanks, Jesse. Hannah, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. Hannah Wienerman from Congressman Nather's office. I just have a few appropriations update at the federal level. So last month, Congressman Nather proudly voted in favor of the House's foreign security and humanitarian aid funding package that includes critical assistance for our democratic allies, Israel, Ukraine, South Korea, and Taiwan, and Japan, as well as vital humanitarian assistance for Gaza and other vulnerable populations. As part of this package, an additional $400 million was secured for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program to ensure that nonprofit organizations, including houses of worship, have the resources necessary to protect themselves from rising threats, including anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. The funding is available for capital and security improvements and trainings. And importantly, the deadline to apply is May 21st. So you can apply through the FEMA website, which I will link in the chat. And then lastly, as the House is in the middle of its appropriations process for FY25, Congressman Nather led letters to the appropriations subcommittees requesting increased funding for various government programs, including Section 8 housing, enforcing EEOC rules, and addressing helicopter noise and safety concerns of the New York area. So I will link the application in the chat. Have a great meeting. Thank you.
Harry, you're up next.
Thanks, Will. Great to be here tonight. I hope everyone is doing well. I want to take the minute that I have to talk about the results that we are just releasing now from this year's participatory budgeting cycle. First of all, we have a district-wide record of most votes ever at 5,370 for District 5. We're very proud of that. We've now won the Borough of Manhattan for all participating participatory budgeting districts for all of Manhattan. We're 2 years in a row for winning the borough. Very proud of that. We have 6 winning initiatives. The first 3 of the original $1 million that the council member agreed to spend was $250,000 for tech upgrades for all 5 libraries in the district, wheelchair accessibility for the lunchroom at Eastside Middle School, and music and auditorium upgrades at Wagner Middle School. The next 3 that the council member decided to fund for an extra almost $1 million is a shared cafeteria and gym upgrades for a new AC system at Bayard Taylor School and Yorkville East Middle School. Quickly, the last 2 tech upgrades and 3D printer at PS 527 and a brand new mobile command center for the NYPD's 19th precinct. This is like a large very souped up van for quick deployment for up to 20 police officers.
Okay, thank you, Harry.
Sophie?
Thank you.
Hey everyone. So we are at the height of our legislative session. We have 21 days left up in Albany. And I have some happy updates. Yesterday, our e-bike bill A7628 passed the assembly unanimously. The bill will require that accident reports through the DMV include an option to indicate whether accidents involved an electric scooter or bicycle with electric assist. And this is just going to provide us with a lot more data to actually see, where the issues are with e-bikes in the district. Last week, we hosted the Knickerbocker Grays up in Albany to advocate for our bill A7686, which would allow the Knickerbocker Grays to keep using the 7th Regiment Armory. Our Sure You Can bill A8425, which makes technical corrections to the definition of the weapon designated as throwing star or shuriken. That passed both the Assembly and the Senate, so we're happy about that. And just throwing in here at the end is that we introed our Access for All bill, which would make community boards, it would lift their in-person requirements. So we're happy about that as well. Thanks, everyone.
Just to be clear, Sophie is from Assemblyman Alex Ford's office. She's new relatively. Thank you, Sophie.
Liz Arts?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. From Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office, standing on behalf of Julia Manza. Just one announcement tonight, which is that DA Bragg announced an indictment for the possession of over 1 million stolen goods as part of a retail theft fencing operation. And this was a long-term cooperative investigation with Macy's, Ulta Beauty, CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid. The DA commented that we must use every tool in our toolbox to address the root causes of retail theft, and a critical piece of that is upstream proactive investigations into those who stand to profit. In addition to disrupting fencing networks, we will continue to target the small number of recidivists who are driving a significant amount of retail theft and ensure appropriate accountability. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Finally, Courtney Farrisee.
Hi, good evening. I'm Courtney Farrisee, representing the Office of Assembly Member Rebecca Seawright and reporting from Albany this evening. The proliferation of unlicensed cannabis shops is one of the top complaints received at our office, and as such, Assembly Member Seawright called on the New York City Sheriff to inspect local retailers suspected of selling unlicensed products. With the passage of our New York State budget, New York City now has the new enforcement authority of closing cannabis businesses. In partnership with the 19th Precinct, our office hosted a crime prevention forum to educate seniors on safety, scams, ID, and mail theft prevention. If you're unsure of how to use Omni for reduced fare, please contact our office. We held an information session this last week with Lenox Hill Neighborhood House, where senior citizens learned how the new fare payment Omni tap and go system will work. We broke records at our recent no-cost shred-a-thon with over 400 attendees on York Avenue and 79th Street. And you may have heard that our ERA ballot amendment is facing a legal challenge. Assemblymember Seawright issued a statement. In the wake of the Dobbs decision, the last-ditch ploy underscores the urgent need to codify our equal rights for all New Yorkers. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Courtney. Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you, elected official reporters. Happy to have you with us. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to the chair's report. I just want to reiterate a warm welcome to our new members, Sebastian, Sasha, Amir, Matt, and Todd. Welcome to the group. I know you're sorry you got into it now that you're here and you've seen how it works, but welcome. Okay, more to come. I sent an email out asking for mentors for our new members. I hope you will want to do it. I've heard from some people. Additionally, we're putting together a little bio book that will only be circulated amongst members. So look for that and add your bio. We want to get those out sooner rather than later. So it's a refresher for people on the board to know other people, as well as to meet our new people. Thank you. A couple of other items. I just want to thank Gail Barron for testifying on behalf of CB8 at the hearing on Tuesday. Thank you, Gail. She was expressing our longstanding opposition to the construction of bus shelters on Madison Avenue in the historic district. We'll keep watching that issue. It's been coming up from time to time, and last Tuesday was no exception. I want to mention a little bit about our land use meeting. I want to thank everyone for being such good citizens and being civil towards one another during our meeting. These are tough meetings. It's very hard to balance the needs of our hospital neighbors with the concerns of our residents. We try to do the best we can. I spoke with Julie Menon today. She's aware of our discussions. Once the borough president reports it out, which I'm sure he will, I don't know what other conditions he may put on the approval. I think it's a great step forward and, a nice touch that he came tonight and he was willing to meet with our residents. So this is an ongoing process. And despite some of the commentary, I think the collaboration and working with our neighbors to get to these approvals is extremely important. I just want to segue. I've been receiving quite a few letters, emails from people related to the Northwell project. I just want to assure people in the room that we will try and take the same approach with Northwell if they choose to come forward before you, Looker. We cannot make them appear prior to. MSK was very forthcoming and wanting to meet with us. So I'm going to use this public meeting to say again, we're happy to meet with Northwell whenever you want to come and talk to us. We would hope that would be sooner rather than later. Another item I want to address is I want to talk about our participation in the street fair. It's a great way to meet people in our community. I think the community board member who came that day, we were a little cold, but the conversation warmed us up. I would say that most people had two items on their mind, e-bikes and congestion pricing. And luckily, Assemblyman Boris's table was just a block away, so we sent a lot of people over to him to continue the discussion. He was a great trooper. He was out there all day. I'm not sure he knew where all these people were coming from, but now I'm outing myself. We were sending them over from the CB8 table. So, no, it was a really good afternoon. We enjoyed meeting everyone, and we also got a lot of people to sign up for our newsletter, which was great. Two other things. Sorry, I just want to go to my phone for a second. That may be of interest to people, and I apologize I didn't go to the phone. We received a letter from the DOT saying that they are coordinating with the Department of Sanitation that they've completed a study involving the traffic conditions and land use along the Lexington Avenue corridor. And as a result, a pilot program consisting of street cleaning regulations will be in effect Monday and Thursday from 7 a.m. to 8:30, and those will be implemented on the west side of Lexington Avenue from East 96th Street to East 59th Street. And work orders were submitted to the Manhattan Sign Shop for signage and the on-street parking unit to retime the muni meters, and this work is scheduled to be implemented on May 11th, 2024. So I don't know if Andrew Fine is in the room, but we're finally making some progress on a resolution that we passed back in 2023. And shout out to Craig and Chuck because they have been following that as well. The other thing I wanted to mention is an ongoing, just want to mention, and this was in our newsletter, the DOT is charged with redesigning the city's truck route network in order to enhance safety, increase vehicle visibility, and reduce traffic congestion. As part of that drive, DOT has launched its truck route network redesign public feedback portal. I suggest if you have any commentary that you get in that portal while you can. I'm sure that a lot of people hear trucks rolling down First Avenue, down Second Avenue at night. So get in there while you can. We have the information in the office. Last but not least, I just want to two things actually. Number one, CB8 Zooms will be back on the air or on the web, whatever the correct terminology is. One man's broadcast is another man's webinar, so whatever vernacular you use, we're coming back. If you have any ideas about a broadcast, please send them to Will and I. We're working with Lori, who's going to be the coordinator, and we just try to put a little bit more guidelines around how we're working it. So if you have any ideas, please send them, and we look forward to that webinar coming back quickly. I think that's all I really want to say tonight. I just want to thank everyone for their patience and participation. You have one question? Okay.
Yes. Can we write a letter to Northwell? Actually inviting them?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, again,
Yeah.
we have one on the system, that we've sent repeatedly, so we can just change the date on it and resend it. I'm all in favor of that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, move to Will, and then we'll move to the committee reports.
Yeah, we're tight on time, so I'm gonna keep my report short. So first, new members, congratulations, welcome. Call me anytime, call my staff anytime, we're available, email us. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, they're usually good questions. Thanks to Kaz and Billy and Rebecca and all of the outgoing members. If they were watching on YouTube, thank you for all your work and effort, and Kaz has been around for many years, so
Yes.
we're all thankful for everything they put in. Piggybacking on about the street fairs, we have another street fair coming up that we'll be tabling on June 1st. So it's on First Avenue. We'll be sending out a sign up, link to volunteer. So we hope that many of you who didn't get a chance
Have banners?
circle back then.
In progress,
Actually,
Will. in
how about
progress.
this? Graphic design is not my passion. If you are somebody who loves graphic design and you want to design some sort of new banner or new image and iconography for CB8, I know Barry is the one who designed the original flyers or the original banners. So I mean, he's got a high bar to live up to. But if you want to live up to Barry's shadow,
Yeah. We can have a contest, and the only winning prize is that we use it, because we
Yeah.
don't have any money to pay anybody, so.
you get our gratification and appreciation. So yeah, I know it's one of those things that I want to make it look nice. I don't want to make it just look so we don't have any renderings of the old version. Maybe Barry does somewhere in the old file, but we can reach out to people. That's for everybody. If you're on Zoom and you want to participate, email us your design for CB8 banner. One last thing, committees. A lot of you have been waiting so ever patiently for us to sort out some confusion about the quarterly schedule that we're going to move to for some of our non-standing but standing committees that meet very regularly. Look for an email from us tomorrow that's going to give more information about how that's going to be structured. That will hopefully create some predictability for you as co-chairs to know when your meetings will be, so you don't have to come asking for dates. And also allow some more flexibility for people who need to add a meeting in, and then dates won't be claimed by, meetings that might cancel last minute.
Yeah, so don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Take it with a grain of salt and be positive, and we'll work together. I think it's gonna be a good start, and then, we'll be able to trade and it won't put pressure on people to have meetings that they're really not ready for, because they're fearful that they will lose their standing date. So we're hopeful that that'll work. Okay, we ready to move to committee report? Okay, streetlight committee, why don't you come up, while you're doing that? I did forget one item. I just want to reiterate that we're still looking for artists for the street fair, and the deadline has been, extended to June 2nd. So, still calling out all artists, people, let them know we want to, help them get their name and, work out there. Okay, Lindsay Abraham?
Okay, so this
month, we had 11 applications. We had our first application for Department of Transportation for a sidewalk cafe. So that's the new sort of sidewalk cafes that will come on as we phase out the sidewalk sheds. We had 10 unanimous approvals and 1 non-unanimous approval. That was 11 to 1 or 10 to 1.
I move to take all the unanimous approval together.
No, I have to object because 4A was unanimous.
4A was unanimous.
Yeah, so I'm gonna vote differently, so I don't know.
Well, so you want to pull
So
out
just,
4A?
yeah, just make
Okay,
a
that's
note on
Okay, so we'll take the
4A.
first non-unanimous and we'll pull out 4A.
Okay.
Call the question on.
Anyone opposed on your question?
Is anybody gonna vote no? Okay, can we do it by acclamation then? Aye, okay.
So the non-unanimous, was, the last one, if you scroll to the bottom of the packet, it was at Jeremy's, which is a bar space next to Schaller and Weber and next to the, grocery, the Schaller Weber grocery as well. Or next to the shoe was what I'm talking about. And it was, there was 1 person against it, 10 people for it. Marco, if you want to talk about why you were against it, you can.
Yes.
Briefly, Marco, please.
Well,
The timer is until we get kicked out.
Yeah.
this application, it should be divided in 2 parts. The first one, it should be the interior and the sidewalk. The other part is the rear yard. In the rear yard, they don't have the legal use of the rear yard, and they are planning to put 35 seats or whatever number is. But it has to have some legal document to allow to do that. And that the only document is the certificate of occupancy. They claim that they own the adjacent building and they're gonna open a door to go over there. Well, if they can do that, it's fine, but the person that who's gonna evaluate that is the Department of Buildings. Because the means of egress, that is the issue right here, is because you cannot go through another space. It has to lead directly to the public way. Otherwise, it's not a means of egress. But this kind of evaluation or assessment, it has to be on the Department of Buildings. If they don't provide that one, I cannot recommend something that those patrons be cornered by the fire or something like that and create some dangerous conditions to the human being. And that is why I'm opposed, and always I will oppose this kind of application. Thank you.
Okay, so I misspoke. That wasn't the last one. The last one was the unanimous, sidewalk cafe one. This one is for Jeremy's, which is somewhere else in here. 2C, thank you. At the meeting, Marco and the lawyer from this place went back and forth on how they could occupy this or not. And everyone else felt differently. Barbara?
Vote question. This is on 2C now?
Yes, 2C.
2C. Yeah, I think you're gonna have.
Yeah.
Yes, call the roll. Okay, on 2C, sorry. Okay, Anderson.
Yes.
Angeles.
Yeah.
Ashley.
No.
Barron.
Yes.
Birnbaum.
No.
Boris.
Yes.
Ferrera. Camp.
Yes.
Charleson.
Yes.
Shu.
Yes.
Cone.
No.
Coleman.
Yes.
Cormac.
Yes.
Barber.
Yes.
Helen Clark.
Yes.
Bartzog.
Yes.
Hershenson.
Yes.
Halpern.
Yes.
Hussein.
Doesn't have her camera on.
All right, Jaffer.
Yes.
And he's on that.
Yes.
Johnson.
Sorry, it was-
Sahar's yes. Crickler.
Yes.
Rader.
Yes.
Webb, yes. Mason.
Yes.
McClement.
No.
Meyer.
Myerson, yes.
No.
Meyer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Meyerson.
Still yes.
All right, Mossman.
Yes.
Partial.
Yes.
Phillips.
Yes.
Hopper.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Rose.
No.
Rudder.
Yes.
Salcedo.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Sassen.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Seligson.
Yes.
Selim.
She
stepped out.
She stepped out.
Squire,
Yes.
Stein,
Yes.
Amaya,
No.
Wald,
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
All right, the resolution passed.
I want to change my vote
Okay.
no, please. Thank you.
Camp is now no.
And I'm gonna change mine to no, so.
All right, and Mason is also no. All right, but the resolution still passes 35 yes, and 8 no's.
Okay, so the other one that I think we're gonna have to call the roll on is the unanimous approval at the bottom,
4A.
4A.
Can you just take
Just take
it?
it out. What is the name, what's the name?
This is Festival Cafe.
Is that the last one? I'm sorry. I
It
can't
is the last
remember.
one, it's the one that Michelle doesn't want to.
Is everybody else gonna vote yes?
Sure, Michelle, you can tell us why.
Excuse me?
Why you don't want to approve it?
Yeah, I don't want to go into it. It's a sidewalk cafe and I'm not happy about how they're processing those. And so I think we're gonna get a slew of them. I think we have to examine them very, very carefully, very closely. And so I'll vote no on this.
Probably the only reason I answered because they told us that they're taking down their outdoor
I can't hear you,
cafe.
Judy.
They told us they're taking down their outdoor cafe. Actually, it should be gone by today. And now they're just putting tables and chairs.
Well, that's all that's supposed to be there, are tables and chairs.
That's what it is.
But she's against, I mean,
No, I just wanted.
I appreciate that. Okay, you guys are running it.
Such called the question, do we have a second? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Roll. Do we want to do it just the one no, and is anyone?
Is
voting?
anybody else gonna vote no?
No abstain or not voting for cause?
No.
Okay, so
Okay,
all my.
then, just let's have a yes vote by acclamation, except for Michelle, everybody's in favor? Okay.
And also just a big welcome from Streetlight to all the new.
He's recruiting, in case you haven't figured that out. Okay, Parks and Waterfront,
Thank you. We had 3 resolutions for approval. The first one relates to St. Catherine's Park. We would like to withdraw the resolution. There's some additional issues that came up. We've asked the Parks Department to come back to our next meeting in June, and we will come back here in June with a revised resolution. So the 2 other resolutions that are for approval, were unanimously approved. The first is for a public artworks installation on 103rd Street. The pictures are in the minutes, it's very, very beautiful. And the second is to, authorize or approve the Parks Department exploring, not actually taking action, but just exploring converting 48 handball courts at Stanley Isaacs Park to pickleball courts.
Hold the question, take vote. Second.
Second. All
in favor?
anyone opposed? Thank you.
We did this fast.
I think that's the way we should do it. Yeah, was there anyone who's gonna vote no on any of those? Pickleball versus, I don't know what. Handball, sorry, not either one of my sports, but. Okay, so it's a unanimous yes for those 2. Okay, landmarks committee. You have one, right?
Yeah, we just have one.
Okay, awesome.
And it was unanimous disapproval. We can wait till Will finds the images. Basically, this was for, 4967th Street, which is a neo-federal house originally built in the 1870s and renovated in 1919. By Sterner and Wolf, who did a lot of work like this in the district. This is an image of what the building looks like today. The next one noted has a wood door. Next.
Sorry.
They are at staff level, but we showed you that I thought it was nice to show this because it shows that they're really making an effort. The right-hand side of the slide shows what is in fact on the site now. And the one on the left is their proposal, which is a recreation of the original little railings at that second floor. That's nice, but when it came to the door, which was the part we were really talking about, next slide. They proposed changing the wood door, which you saw in the other picture, and now see again in a drawing with the metal and glass door on the right. And I think the attitude of the committee, if I can speak for us, and committee members are nodding, is a lot like one of my professors in architecture at her school who said, fortunately not to me, this is very nice, but not here.
Yeah.
And so this was a unanimous disapproval, and mostly for reasons that had to do with the change in material and the kind of, it's a little bit clunky in the opening, and so it was a unanimous disapproval. Barbara?
Call the question.
Second.
Anyone object? Excellent. Anyone voting no, which is to say you love it?
I think it looks nice.
We didn't say it didn't look
No, okay.
nice.
I know.
Okay, well then we'll have to call the roll. There's a lot of other hands.
Well, maybe somebody should speak to it.
I would like to express it as well. This is, as you pointed out, this is a very handsome door. It was designed. However, this is a very fine and important building. And the wooden door, what was originally there, and I think the quality of this building requires what respects the original architecture. It's as opposed to introducing something which may be handsome.
Okay, thank you. The question's been called, so I think we're about to vote.
Point of information,
Sure.
do we have a picture of the building? Because
Yeah.
just looking at the doors without seeing what the building looks like.
It's in there.
It's in their package, Judy.
8 minutes.
Go back to the first photo.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Okay, there, stay there.
We're on the clock, please.
So the election was called, and I have to go to a roll call.
Okay, that's the unanimous disapproval, so a yes is a no.
Correct.
Okay, all right, Anderson. Sorry, I didn't hear.
No.
Thank you.
Angelos, Ashby,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Birnbaum,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Ferrero,
No.
Camp,
Yes.
Cholasong,
Yes.
Chu,
Yes.
Cone,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Cormac, yes, Parker,
Yes.
Howland Clark,
No.
Hartsey,
Yes.
Hershenson,
No.
Halpern,
Yes.
Hussein,
Yes.
Johnson, Prickler,
No.
Later,
No.
Lev,
No.
Mason,
Yes.
McClement,
Yes.
Meyer,
No.
Meyerson,
Yes.
Montman,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Phillips,
No.
Hopper,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Rose,
No.
Rudder,
No.
Salcedo,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Hassan,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Seligson,
No.
Salam,
Yes.
Squire,
Yes.
Stein,
Yes.
Tamayo,
Yes.
Wald,
No.
Warren.
No.
Okay, 30 yeses, 15 nos.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sanitation and Environment Committee.
Me come up too, or not?
Yeah.
I hope this is fast. We have time. We had a meeting on composting, and there's really two parts to composting, and we have resolutions about what. One is the collection of compost that has been in green markets, and it's been defunded, so we don't have that anymore. The other is actually, I'm sorry, the collection of food waste. Then it's bringing it to the
compost site that actually makes composting. We had a meeting that talked about the wonderful environmental benefits of and so on. The sites are being defunded. We heard specifically from one that's called Big Reuse, that even though it's placed under the bridge in Long Island City, it services our area and especially Roosevelt Island. So our two unanimous resolutions basically was asking for funding for the green markets to be able to collect the scraps. And then second resolution that had two parts. One was to add funding for these collection sites generally. They've all been defunded. Specifically, Big Use is worried about being evicted from under, which would have a great effect on Roosevelt Island in particular. And asking for them not to be evicted.
Can we do them both together?
Yeah. Can we? Can we do it
Sure.
together? Is anybody gonna vote no?
Great.
Proclamation.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to Paul Kirkler and the Roosevelt Island Committee, because it was really out of that meeting that came, people to talk to about composting. And for those of you who didn't catch the Sanitation and Environment Committee, it was a really great discussion on this topic. Okay, I think we're done with the new business. I want to thank everybody for their dedication. Does somebody want to make a motion? Second? Okay, I just want to thank the Chance School for hosting us tonight. I think that's nice. And have a great evening. Remember, Jimmy, come with your worksheet. It's another night. I'm gonna re-advertise the zoning and development committee meeting on May 21st, next Tuesday, to start or get something in the middle of the discussion. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice evening. Okay.
No, I'm back.